Welcome to Stepfamily Saturday Series with your Stepfamily guides. We're here to lead you through the everyday challenges of your stepfamily journey. I'm Adrienne, and with me today are my fellow Stepfamily guides, Amy and Amelia. Hi, ladies. How are you today?
Great. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. So I'm personally really excited to jump into today's conversation. And I'm excited about the topics that we have for all of June, actually. So we've put together Stepfamily Mythbusters, and each week we're going to talk about some different myths that exist in the world of stepfamilies. So I am ready to dive into educating and breaking the stigma. How about you gals?
Absolutely.
Yeah, this was a fun one to put together.
It was. So today's myth, we're going to talk about the idea that once we get married or once a couple moves in together, that we are an instant family, that's what makes us a family. And I'm curious how often you two have heard this from clients that you coach or step families among your family and friends.
Yeah.
This is up there.
I have two different aspects that look like when I'm looking at this. So I have, from the coaching perspective, basically everyone I've worked with so far, that's one of the things is like when we're talking about them not feeling like a family, like, oh, we've moved in together and it's still, we're not jiving. And I'll say, studies have actually been done and it's proven that it takes 4 up to 7 years or even longer to begin to even feel like a family. And when we get talking about that, explaining to them that there's so many factors, is the ex high conflict? Like, is there that loyalty bind that's in the way that prevents the child to, kind of bond with with their other parent and with the step parent? And are there other children involved? And how old is the child or children? There's just so many factors. But for me personally, I've been thinking about this a lot lately because I've been asked about it a lot lately. And I think for me, I struggled with it because my parents, while they did a lot of things wrong, the one great thing they did do for me was not put me in the middle. And I always saw my parents getting along and my stepdad getting along with my dad. And to me, it just felt like a family, like one big family. So when I became a step parent, it really threw me for a loop that like I was having all these feelings that I wasn't prepared for.
Yeah, so there's so much there. I feel like we could dive into so many different aspects of everything you shared. And you're right, the statistic about it could take anywhere on average from 4 to up to 7 years for a blended or step family to really come together and feel like a family unit. And at that will never be comparable to a nuclear family. They are very different, and that's okay. I don't think we should be comparing them, but to allow ourselves the grace and the space to give that time, to know that these relationships don't just develop overnight. It's very different to build a relationship between a child and a step parent than it is from a baby that you birthed or a baby that is yours biologically. And I think that it's okay to accept that for what it is and to work towards the positives of building a healthy relationship.
Yeah, and even just to interrupt you there, not necessarily even a child you birthed, but maybe you adopted or a surrogate, right? That you've grown connected to through those things as well. But it is different. Even that is different than a step family.
Right. Well, and each one of those are different types of family. And we could go into all of the nuances around each of those: adopted, surrogacy, step, blended, nuclear. I mean, we could go on and on. So Amy, what about you? Where do you stand on this? What are your thoughts? What do you hear most from clients around this topic?
Typically, a lot of what Amelia said, we assumed that we would all blend together really well. And, it's funny because I've had couples who, we dated for a long time and I knew the kids really well and, that whole story, but then they got married, they all moved in together. It's different dating someone and dating their kids versus living with their kids. Everybody's got their own idiosyncrasies. If you're blending kids together, you can't kids that are like, hey, let's go to the park together, or hey, let's go to the movies together, that's one thing. But having to live together and figure out those morning routines and things like that, that takes time. The other part of that that I always remind my especially my step parents when I'm coaching them is that you're coming into the story about 5 to 10 chapters in. You don't have that history. So you can't anticipate that being a smooth relationship because you're literally jumping in the middle of the book. Like if I were to open a book and start at chapter 10, I wouldn't have all that history of knowledge that the birth parent does. So there's going to be some give and take trying to figure out those relationships. You mentioned space and grace, and I think all three of us use that with our clients all the time. It's like we have to just take our time and understand that everybody's got to shimmy and figure out how we're going to all fit together in, you know, in the house and the routines and the whatever we have to do.
That and to add on to what you just shared, you know, there's the reality that when we date somebody or when two people date, they are spending time building that relationship, getting to know one another, falling in love and having that relationship built on love. Bringing children into that mix typically happens a little bit later, even if it is early on. It's a different relationship, right? You two, the two adults, have chosen to be in that relationship. Children don't ask to be in step families. They don't ask to have step parents introduced. And so that's one more layer and dynamic that if we're aware of it, we can address it in a healthy way, have conversations around it, and be proactive to take steps to mitigate the problems and embrace that family unit. Yeah. Amelia, you look like you were going to say something.
Well, no, I just think that it is so important to remember that, yeah, the kids didn't choose this divorce. They didn't choose to have a step parent. They didn't. And, you know, as much as, yeah, you might be angry with your ex or whatever it is, that's still your child's parent. And you still need to give them the space and time to grieve the loss of that family and to kind of come to terms with this next chapter. Not to say that, you know, it's all negative, but just give them some time and allow them to talk about it, and don't take it personally, but give them the space. And we've talked about that, you know, previously in another episode, but it is an important topic to remember.
Absolutely.
You know, there's the additional piece of it too, that when a nuclear family starts, it's mom and dad, and then or husband and wife, and then the kids, you know, slowly come into the picture. When a blended family comes together, we have all of the external noise too. We have exes, we have ex-in-laws, we have ex-grandparents. Well, I don't want to say ex-grandparents. I'm sorry, I did. You know the phrase. They're the grandparents on the ex's side. But in nuclear families, you don't have all that additional stress on your relationship. Now you're navigating not only your marriage and your relationship with the kiddos, but you're also navigating all of these other people that used to be a part of your kids' lives because of the marriage. And now they're like a step back and they still want to be involved. So that really adds to the chaos of trying to blend your household with all of the other demands happening too.
And for some, that can be exponential because it,
oh my gosh,
you know, some relationships, it's blended from both sides, right? It's his and hers from ex and his and hers exes and all that comes with that. For others, it's on one side. That doesn't mean it's any less chaos to deal with or any less to navigate. It's just different dynamics and different feelings brought into that family and what they have to navigate based on if there's two exes that you're trying to co-parent and blend with, or one and one not understanding. So yeah, to say we have a complicated world is probably an understatement. So we've identified that there are many, many challenges around this myth. So let's talk about some of the ways that new step families can be proactive and build a solid foundation for their new family and get started on the right foot. Do you guys have thoughts on or tips and tricks that you typically share with, you know, the step parents or the couples that you coach?
I go with a couple that are standard. First of all, setting boundaries. You have to. I always say we're building your castle and digging a moat, and then you decide who gets to cross the drawbridge across the moat. So for step families, we have to set some boundaries on what's allowed, what's not, noise-wise coming from the outside in. making sure that you keep the dating relationship, because you're going to experience so much stress. So making sure that you keep your family healthy, your marriage healthy, and then one-on-one time with each of the kids so that you get to know your stepkids more, get into their world. Don't assume they're going to love you. And you don't necessarily need to assume that you're going to love them, but you need to learn to at least like each other. So, enough to live together. So get into their world a little bit, find out what their passions are. And even if it's, video games and you hate video games, make yourself just kind of jump in for a little bit to get to know their world. Once you open that door, then the relationship can build a little bit more.
Absolutely. And I'd add on to that one-on-one time. That one-on-one time should be a mix of bio parent, bio child, bio parent, stepchild, step parent, stepchild, all of the different combinations within the family, so that everybody's building relationships one-on-one. And then I would add even further to say intentional family time. So game nights, family dinners, doing fun things like adding questions to your family dinners, putting a jar of questions in the middle and take turns who draws the question for the night, and asking something unusual that you wouldn't normally talk about, or asking something that would be insightful to learn about how the kids feel about something. And it can make for interesting dinner table talk.
At our house, the girls, my daughter and stepdaughter, they like to do the would you rather. So that's always a fun one and turns into a bigger conversation at the dinner table. But yeah.
Yes, that's a familiar one in my house as well. I think the preteen teen girl phase is alive and well. They enjoy those types of conversations. And I think they enjoy getting information out of us as much as we enjoy getting information out of them. And so I do think it's a give and take. And what a great way to teach children communication and healthy communication. So, and to show them that we're human as adults as well. Sometimes I think children and stepchildren have this expectation of parents. And I think sometimes it's good to show them we're humans, we have feelings, and it's okay to be vulnerable with them. And that can be hard as a parent. So, and then of course, building new traditions together can be fun. So looking at, what's something that we can do as a family that's our thing, so that it's something that bonds all of us together. So. Any other thoughts on this myth of being an instant family, or marriage making us one big happy family and everything falling into place right away?
I just think the more we can talk about it and help people, and I've been saying this a lot lately, not just step families, but everyone understands that that's not how it works. And I think it kind of takes weight off people's shoulders. Clients that I've worked with anyways, when I'm like, yeah, it's okay that you're not functioning like a nuclear family or a normal family, like that's totally normal. And they're like, oh, thank goodness. Like, oh, I'm not, we're not horrible people or whatever. And I think just knowing that helps people to relax and go, okay, we're going to be okay.
Right. Normalizing the expectations that we have from all of our exterior influences. I think that's really important. And that's why we're talking about Step Family Mythbusters through the month of June. So I feel like we can't say it enough that, bringing families together and having step families takes time. It requires adjustment, and it doesn't necessarily happen quickly. It certainly doesn't happen overnight, and it's not always a natural thing. Sometimes it can feel forced, and we do have to give that room for space and grace. One of our key phrases that we use often. So thank you for joining us today. We hope this conversation has been so helpful and you've had some key takeaways. We love hearing from our listeners and want to hear more about the topics that you want us to share about or answer questions that you have for us. So please hop on over to our website at stepfamilyguides.com, and you can watch all of our Stepfamily Saturday Series episodes, read our blog, learn more about our coaching, and find resources to help you navigate your step family journey. You can also watch past episodes on YouTube, where you can subscribe and get reminders of episodes that release every Saturday. We hope that you have a wonderful day and enjoy another Step Family Saturday Myth with us